welcome to this episode of Authentic Achievements, where I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Potts. Mike, welcome.
Hey, Kim.
I'm so looking forward to this conversation. But before we get into it, let me just introduce you more properly than that. So, Mike, you've had such a fascinating journey already. Growing up in the Chicago suburbs, you were, in your term, a brand nerd through and through. Your parents started you with piano at the age of 4. Then came saxophone in band and eventually a degree in jazz performance. That sounds awesome. And then after 3 years performing on the cruise ships, you started up a dueling pianos company called Felix and Fingers. And Felix and Fingers is now the largest dueling piano company, specializing in private events with over 400 performers and shows across the United States. What an amazing journey you've been on. Would you mind sharing with us a little bit about that journey in your words, please?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, spot on with kind of the progression of things is I've been a band nerd like my entire life. If there was a music program in school, if there's a choir program in school, if there was anything that I could do music related, that was me. That was my crew. That was my tribe. So, right, that moved into a jazz saxophone degree, which I jokingly say is probably the most useless degree anyone could possibly get. No one cares that I have a degree in jazz performance, but it was a really great experience because of the people I got to study from, where I got to live, because I was studying downtown Chicago. That paved the way for the cruise ship gig, which for 3 years was like, I mean, I recommend cruise ships to anyone in their like lower 20s. If you can get on a cruise ship and go see the world and get paid to do it and meet the people that you get to live with and interact with, that's amazing. Like that was such a cool time in my life. And then, yeah, I came back, and when I came back to Chicago, I realized no one wanted to pay me for jazz saxophone. So, again, just not super useful, but they would pay me to play piano. So one thing led to another, and we moved into a dueling piano show. So, and I forget, like, are you familiar with dueling pianos?
I wasn't until we had our last conversation. So, you know, for the audience that might be like I was pre our last conversation, could you just share with us a little bit about what is dueling pianos?
And in the States, it's a really big thing. Like we have it in every major city. I don't know what it's like on your side of the pond, but every major city has a dueling piano bar. And dueling pianos is a high energy, all request, very interactive type show. So when I say all request based, our team is used to playing anything from, let's say, Elton John, Billy Joel, up to Cardi B or Eminem or like literally anything you can name. That's our job, is to be able to play that style of music. Now, what we do is instead of doing it in the bar atmosphere, we have a mobile show. So weddings, fundraisers, corporate events, any type of private function that we can travel to and set up our show at, that's what we specialize in.
Oh, cool. And it must bring with it really high energy, and that energy must like dissipate across the event. Would that be fair?
Right. Yeah, it's one of the things that is key to us and how we approach the show is we have an acronym for like our company values. And because I'm a band nerd, the acronym is PIANO. Well, the O of piano stands for like our goal is to obsessively create positive, lasting memories.
Oh, I love that.
That's our job.
Yeah. That's what we're all here for, isn't it? You know, it's funny, I was sharing an article just today that was a study on happiness that had been done by Reuters. And it talked about the fact that, you know, we think success is going to make us happy, but happiness is about the experiences and the memories that we create along the way. And therefore, unless we create that experience, unless we create that memory and something that we're really engaged and involved in, we can have monetary success and still not be happy.
Right.
Because Absolutely. We're missing that connection.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, that's the show, is if we can. It's the Disneyland model. And I don't know if you've seen, like, I don't know if it was an article or a book, but somewhere along the line, like I learned that Disneyland, when you go to Disney, you are 99% of the time no more happy in Disney World than you are sitting on the couch eating potato chips. But there's so many opportunities in Disney for that 1% magic to happen.
Yeah.
For some connection, for some memory to happen. And that's why you go. So like, that's what we're trying to do with our show, is find that magic, find the way to bring crowd in and create some sort of an experience that you wouldn't get any other way than having this all request, totally improvised music.
I love that. Because I think, again, that is what we're all really trying to achieve, isn't it? And that Disney 1% of magic, that piece where we can forgive the dog who's decided he wants to join in, which is what happens when you do a podcast on Halloween. So I think, unfortunately, the people outside have not spotted the sign that says, I'm really sorry, I'm out of treats. I guess, like we're talking about, this is a real live experience. So this is kind of what's happening.
You just go with it.
So forgive me for that. But when you first got into dueling pianos, what made you take that leap? Because that's another quite niche space to be in, isn't it?
Right. And it's weird, like there's kind of a joke to an extent in the community that like no one searches out being a dueling pianist. Somehow it finds you. And how we had started the company's called Felix and Fingers Dueling Pianos. Felix and Fingers, when we started, right after I got off the ships, what we were doing was just background jazz. And it was Felix and Fingers because my partner, his name's Dave, Dave he was on American Idol. He was like season 7. He made top 10 guys. He was a phenomenal singer specifically for background jazz. Like he sounded like Sinatra.
Oh, wow.
So we were doing this jazz duo. And one day I showed up at the gig and I said, hey, Dave, Mike and Dave is really like bland and dull. So can we have stage names? I'm going to be Fingers because I was just playing piano.
Yeah.
He was like, well, I'll be Felix because someone thought his name was Felix a few years ago. It was like, that was it. That's the story of how we named the company. And that was just background jazz. What ended up happening was the owner of that venue was purchasing the neighboring venue and wanted to see if we could do dueling pianos. At that moment, I had no idea what the concept was. So I went to like a local bar. I checked it out. I'm like, I can do this. And then I talked to Dave. I'm like, hey, Dave, can you do this? He said, no, absolutely not. So I said, okay, we're going to do it anyways. I'm going to train you. We're going to figure this out. And one thing led to another where we started doing these dueling piano shows. And it just kind of evolved into its own thing. So it found me. I did not seek it out at all.
Oh, I love that. But I think for me, one of the things that comes through your entire story is the burning desire, the passion from birth, it sounds, has been music. It's been to do something with music, whatever that is. And it's been because that's where you gain your joy and that's where you give joy. So you get that kind of duality of not only does it make you joyful, it makes the people around you joyful. And that's been your one constant. So although how that's turned up has evolved along your journey, that bit has remained consistently who you are. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. My family likes to joke that there's no instrument that you can give me that I won't learn or can't already play. Being on the cruise ships, I was able to like pick up a didgeridoo in Australia. So then I was seeking out opportunities to play the didgeridoo with people. I'm going on websites posting that I'm a didgeridoo player. I'm not a great didgeridoo player, but it created so many cool opportunities where like I was in downtown Chicago doing it was some cultural event and I was talking to all the kids about the history of the didgeridoo and doing these demonstrations. And it's just like being committed to music the way that I have been has just revealed so many unique opportunities and experiences to just broaden just my experience in that realm.
I love that because there's loads of research that's shown that once we know what our burning desire is and once we commit to it wholeheartedly in however it's going to show up,
right, then
actually new opportunities turn up. And almost like buses. You're like, well, how did that happen?
Right.
But I think that's because we are so certain of what it is we're here to do. And that's the thing that we're going to commit to. It's like, I don't know how to do that yet. Well, I'll learn it. It's fine. Right. Because you're less daunted by the need to learn than you are by the desire to have the opportunity to see what you can learn.
Yeah, it was just fun. It wasn't work. It was just natural. It was just something I wanted to do. So yeah, I felt like I was my lane, and then therefore the opportunities ended up coming.
Amazing. I love that. So, I mean, you've already achieved so many, but what would you say has been one of the greatest achievements you've had so far?
Greatest achievement. So, I mean, Felix and Fingers has certainly been the biggest project that I've been a part of ever. And as you had mentioned, like we have 400 different musicians that work for us. Like this started out, as I said, it was a jazz duo playing at this small little dinner club in southern Wisconsin. Like it was a tiny thing. There was no grand ambition to build that out. And then we've been around for about 12, 13 years at this point. To see that grow has been amazing. So like that's been kind of maybe the next phase of my journey was as I continued to play and as we continued to get busier, I found out that as the company grew and the team grew, I couldn't serve my team at my best capacity at like the highest level if I was playing shows every Thursday, every Friday, every Saturday night. I couldn't be a good husband or a good father if I was doing shows every weekend. It just wasn't aligning with where I wanted to be and who I now am. So I really think a big achievement has been building out the company in a way that it's been able to scale that I can remove myself from gigs. I haven't played a show with Felix and Fingers for about 4 years at this point,
Wow.
which is crazy, but that's been my new passion, my new project is how can I create an environment that enables as many people as possible to fulfill their dreams, fulfill their needs, like their financial goals, their personal goals, their career goals. How can I create that atmosphere that empowers them to be the best they can be? Because if I can do that, then I can sit back and not sit back and be lazy, but sit back and like enjoy the fruits of what this company has been able to give to people.
Oh, I love that. And it is one of the greatest achievements, because a lot of people go into business like you because they've got a passion and they've got a desire. And then the business starts to grow. And then all of a sudden they hit this wall where it's like, okay, so if I stay doing the bit that I know how to do and do really well, then actually I'm not serving these new parts, because now I've got to lead people and I've got to set the strategy and I've got to make it scalable. And now I'm in it, not on it. And how do you make that transition and enable the business to reach its full potential? So the fact that you've been able to do that and take that step out, and you say you've been doing it for 12 years. So I'd be intrigued. How did COVID impact? Because obviously you are a physical show. That's what you were about. That's what you're about now. So how did you handle that change, and what did you learn from it?
Sure. So COVID was probably both the best and worst thing that could happen to us. Is right. I mean, we had a show that you play for people. So our job became fully illegal. Like, even though we're in a dozen plus states right now in the US, there was no location that we could play this show. So from March till probably June or July, it was just illegal to do our job. I had two options. We could either scale everything back, or we kind of see this as like the opportunity that it was we have no job, but also all the rest of the musicians have no job. They have no gigs. So what we ended up doing was, because up until that point, we'd done a good job of building the system. We've designed all of our own software to help us scale, to really manage things. And like I said, I want to build this platform that people can find success within.
Yeah.
So we used COVID to recruit really, really heavily. So I had ended up training, we do a sales boot camp, and I probably did a sales boot camp for over 40 people. And it was always like 5-person groups, 6-person groups. So every few weeks I was doing a boot camp, trying to recruit and bring people into the concept, because even though the gigs weren't happening, there were still people who had planned for the next year, for 2021, 2022. So if we could build a sales team, then we knew that we could come out of the gate as soon as like the world released their restrictions. We come out of the gate just blazing. And that next year, because 2020 was terrible, 2021 was better because now we were starting to come back, but 2022 was significantly higher than any year that preceded COVID, like more than 150% higher.
Wow. I love that, because I think in those moments when change is put upon us, I think one of the biggest things that we lost during COVID was choice.
Yeah.
So we were no longer able to choose what we wanted to do, where we wanted to go. And some people really struggle with that. And some people then look at it and go, okay, well, let me focus on things like that are in my gift to do. So I can't change these things. And looking at them's not going to help me. But what I can do is look at the things that are in my gift and plan for where we're going to come out next. And that's where we've seen real success for a lot of organizations, is the ones that didn't get stuck in the there and now. They got stuck in the how do we get ready for the future, because the future won't be what the present looks like. And it sounds like that was something that you did super successfully. And 400, I mean, you must have some real learnings around how do you attract and recruit talent in such a niche market, because actually that would be replicable in any market, which is actually how do you get in front of the right people to grow that team? What would be your key learnings from that?
So yeah, working with musicians is a struggle in and of itself. Like, we're in the gig economy, so every musician kind of has their own business already. Like, they're all entrepreneurial, so it's hard to recruit when you're recruiting from a pool of people who are used to booking themselves. So really what's needed to have been learned, and what we've really built a lot of the concept around, is how can we just deliver as much value as possible, that someone would have to be crazy to not want to work with us.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, musicians don't want to do sales. They don't want to do like all the business stuff, even though they have their own businesses. That's not why they got into music. So we've spent a lot of time just building out the system so that we can create an opportunity for those musicians to thrive. Now, some of those musicians are full-time employees, and that was always a value and a priority for me, is we wanted people to have full-time benefits with health insurance and 401ks and profit sharing. That's what we were always trying to build. So there's a small handful of people who have ascended to that level and committed to us in that way. But to truly scale, we also had to find a space and find a role for the people who want to still be kind of on their own, the people who want to do a lot of gigs with us, but have some more just choice over what they're doing and what gigs they're accepting. So we've just built a system that has 3 different levels, depending on where you're at, what you're looking for gigs, that still allow us to keep the product level very high, but also the way that we commit to our players and serve our players in a way that meets them where they're at.
I love that. It reminds me of a book I've recently reread, which is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And it talks about the fact that very often we stop when we get to our level of excellence. So where we know how to do something, people will pay us for it. Yeah. And therefore we just keep going. But actually what we have to do is ascend further to our zone of genius, which is actually us at our very best. And therefore we have to delegate or find other systems, other processes, other people that can do the things that actually take us away from being us at our best. And it sounds like that's what Felix and Fingers is doing for a lot of musicians, which is, if you want to be fully employed and to have those parts, then you can. If actually you want to have some of the access to some of the systems and infrastructure to enable you to continue to build your own business and work on the bits you love to do without having to do all of these other bits that maybe aren't your zone of genius, then actually you can. And I think that flexibility has been one of the big challenges for a lot of organizations, is how do you learn to lead in that more hybrid environment? Has there been any key learnings you've had of having moved into that space and done it so successfully?
Right. And yeah, I think you're right. It's like the workforce now is different than it was, let's say, 50 years ago. It's like everyone has all the tools they need to be successful on their own. Everyone has ambitions. There's a lot of really good content out there that are encouraging people to be their best. So yeah, I mean, what are the learnings? It all comes back to how can I serve the team? How can I make the best possible platform? How can I take like, I'm a big fan of Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. It's like, how can I take ownership to say, okay, if someone doesn't want to work with Felix and Fingers, if they don't want to commit to us, something about the way that I've built the system isn't serving them. Something about the offer I'm making isn't strong enough, isn't valuable enough to inspire them to take that step. So it all comes back to me. So we're constantly going in and tweaking and optimizing and finding new ways to make, I mean, here's probably the best story most recently is we built this company using like aggregator websites. So we're in the wedding industry. You have The Knot, you have Wedding Wire. Those are the 2 big companies, which are now one company, one bought the other. But The Knot and Wedding Wire gave us all of our leads. We had all of our reviews. That's how we built the company. Over the past 3 years, they have lost their grasp on the markets. Like our leads have gone from like 40 leads per month down to 4. Like we're at 10% of what it used to be. So, okay, what do we have to do now to solve this? It used to be that as we were recruiting sales reps, it's like, well, here's how you reach out to venues and planners and introduce yourself and make friends, and here's how you cold call. But at the end of the day, I know that musicians didn't pick up a saxophone or a piano or whatever it was so that they could do cold calling. The system wasn't serving them, and therefore people were falling out of it.
Yeah.
So now the challenge has been, is there a new way that we can like really leverage the skills of the people who are coming in for sales and help them find other ways of generating leads? And we're now going to do a podcast system, and we're going to be doing we call it our Pay It Forward campaign, where we're just giving value back into the community by trying to match leads up with other vendors, all with this mentality of like, hey, our musicians are personable, they're fun, they're like ambitious people. They don't want to do cold calling, but they do want to make a difference. So by being able to tap into that, I think we have a really nice platform that we're building and will continue to build.
I love that, because it really is about putting, when I say the customer at the heart, you've got two customers as I see it. So you've got the end customer, the person whose wedding you're playing for, whose venue, whose event that you're supporting, and making sure that it's an amazing event for them, and that that you make the most of their special time. Yeah. But you've also got your second customer, which is your musicians. And I've always said as a leader, my client is my people. If they don't like what I'm doing, if what I do doesn't add value or serve, they won't continue to work for me. And then they won't deliver to the end client what I want them to deliver. And you've really started to put that into practice of saying, how do you constantly keep iterating, listening to the feedback, understanding what really is working and what isn't working, so that you can keep evolving. And that's where we see innovative companies really do well, but it's where we see some of the big giants have got it wrong, and then they have to come back, and the hit can be hard, can't it? When they stop listening because ego gets in the way, and all of a sudden they lose market share, and then they have to rebrand and relaunch. So I think one of the great lessons that you've already got and you've shared with us is that constantly looking outward for the feedback, but looking inward for the accountability of doing something with that feedback.
Yeah, no, and I think that's well said. Right, it's like, how can we serve the team, and how can I really be open-minded? One of my favorite books is Ray Dalio's Principles, where he preaches about being radically open-minded. The further I remove myself from the day-to-day operations so that I can work on the systems and scaling and all the fun stuff that really gets me going right now, the bigger my blind spot is. And the more I need to listen to the team to understand what's going on. And it's so easy to be like, oh, well, I used to play that gig 5 years ago, and you're wrong because it used to be like this. So just like suck it up and deal with it.
Yeah.
That's not a way to inspire a team. That's not the way to grow a company and improve.
No, it's not. And I love that. Yeah. I used to joke that I made a career out of asking dumb questions, because I did transformation for years and went in and asked people, can I just ask, why do we do that like that? And why is that? To learn, not because I was just challenging where they were going, but often you'd find that we were asking them to do something because we'd always done it that way. And even though they thought it was ridiculous and the world had moved on, they're still doing it because nobody actually asks from a position of curiosity, from a position of, well, okay, let's be really open-minded. Why are we doing that? What other ways are there to do it? How could we do something different so that we bring it? And I love that actually that's how you're approaching things from a leadership point of view, and also from a running a business point of view, which is, how do you stay so curious and therefore open-minded to that change, to go, it might have worked like that when I did it 5 years ago. It might not work like that now, because the world keeps evolving, doesn't it? And our desires keep changing.
Yeah. Especially with dueling pianos. The tunes are changing. It's an all request based show. So the audience changes. The audience I was playing for, I mean, with weddings, the people getting married are always the same age. So as they age out of that group and a new generation comes in, the job's different. The gig is different. So the team is essential to just removing that blind spot that I have, and I need to listen.
I love that, because we all have blind spots for a reason. We're blind to them. So
Right.
it's not because we don't want to change. It's because we don't know what they are. But if we're willing to listen and ask, and people are willing to tell us, then actually we can get through our blind spots because we see what they are. You've shared so much amazing stuff already. What would you say in business overall has been the greatest lesson you've learned so far?
The greatest lesson for me in business, I have, and you probably can't tell very well behind me, but like I love this wall behind me. Before I had like the plants and the shelves.
I'm fascinated by it. It looks amazing.
So
And
yeah,
I want to lean forward and read what's on it. I was
Right.
like, I can't do that because I'm really interested in the conversation with you. But it's so intriguing that it invites you in.
So yeah, what I did was, before the shelves were up there, and it was like my 30th birthday, I was having some existential crisis where I was thinking about like who I want to be and what I want to do in my 30s. And I thought, you know what? I have this blue wall behind me. I'm going to grab some Sharpie markers, some gold and silver and bronze Sharpie markers, and I'm going to write every phrase up there that truly speaks to me. And then over the years, I continue to add phrases to that wall. And it's not like a blackboard wall. It's not like a chalkboard type thing. You can't erase it. It's a Sharpie marker. My wife is so upset about it. Like when she came downstairs and she saw I'd scribbled all over the wall, and my handwriting is not good, she was not happy about that at all. But like, two of the things that just kind of come to mind immediately from the wall behind me is, number one, I'm a firm believer in the phrase, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go as a team. And I want to go fast. Like, geez, I want to go so fast so many times. And there's like, I kind of come from, my dad's a business owner. And I'm always used to hearing him say stuff like, yeah, if you want it done right, do it yourself. But that's such a limiting belief. It's such a limiting mindset, because yeah, if you want it done right, sure, do it yourself. But you won't get it all done. Like, you're giving up so much to be the technician, to like do the thing that you think you need to do, when you could be finding a way to create a better system to delegate it to someone else.
Yeah.
So it's been a challenge to put my pride aside and let things fail, let things be not perfect, so that I can let the team lean into that gap and grow from that experience. That's number one. The other one that I love, one of my other favorite books is just The One Thing. So like, what's the one thing, like their question, their main idea is, what's the one thing you can do such that by doing makes everything else easier or unnecessary? That's been everything with Felix and Fingers. What can I do that makes every other task easier or unnecessary? Because if I can figure out that thing and I can make a system around that, then I can move on to the bigger challenges. I can move on to the scalable challenges, as opposed to the day-to-day minutia.
Oh, I love both of those. I think it's true. I think it used to be, certainly, I mean, I'm older than you. When I was in my teeth in leadership, it was that, if you want it done well, do it yourself. And so if that's really your thinking, then you're not giving yourself any credit for your ability to teach. Because you're saying that actually you're incapable of teaching what you know to somebody else. And when you play that back to somebody who said, if you want to do it well, do it yourself, go. So you can't teach others. And they're like, well, no, I can. Well, do then. Do pass it on. Bring in people who are going to now be able to do it your way and surpass your way and do it even better, because then that's how we'll grow. And I think often we get stuck trying to solve the whole problem, don't we? We look at it and go, I'm not going to make any move until I can see every move between where I am today and where I want to be. And it's like, you never get anywhere that way. If we look at what is the one step I can take, what's the one action that I can see that will move us forward, and take that, then actually you start to change your vantage point, don't you? You start to bring others into view. And I think it was Michael Jordan that said, you don't have to see the whole staircase, you just have to take the next step. And I think it's great that that's kind of your ethos in it, which is the best way to move through these things is to just keep taking action and looking at I've got a friend who said, you've got to look at what's the biggest problem and what's the smallest solution.
Mm.
So if you keep looking for the smallest solution, even if it doesn't solve everything, but it moves you closer, then before you know it, the problem has been solved. Such insight in your entire journey. Could I ask you for one last thing?
Yeah.
If you could go back and give your younger self some advice, what would it be?
If I give my younger self some advice, and you know what, this even ties into what you had just said, and like if you want something done right, do it yourself. I've been kind of a fan of this idea that being busy is being lazy. And let me unpack that for a second. Is like, as a technician, like when you get good at something and you want to do that thing, and you want to do that thing yourself because you want to get it done right, and then you start like identifying yourself as someone who works really, really hard and puts in all these long hours, and it's because you are the most competent, most able, most whatever type of person in the world. It's actually the laziest way to do your job, because you're not making the hard decisions. You're not actually challenging yourself to do something that's outside your comfort zone. You're not challenging yourself to grow. You're just taking solace in the fact that you feel needed because of the needs you created for yourself. And I mean, again, I come from a family where my dad's an entrepreneur. He works all day long, all night long. Growing up, like, he left before I went to school, and he came back when I went to bed. Like, I didn't see him that much during the weekdays. And I love him, and I've learned so much from his work ethic, but also noticed that that's a double-edged sword. And just by being that busy is escaping the decisions you need to make. It's being lazy for what matters. Or as Gary Keller says, if you're working more than 8 hours per day, you're cheating. I love that. If you're working more than 8 hours, you're cheating. How long have I been cheating? That was something that blew my mind when I started thinking about that, and I wish I knew that when I was younger.
Oh, I love that. That's so amazing. My dad equally. He was an entrepreneur, and growing up, we didn't see him. Love him to bits. Learned loads. But I knew when I went to this next part of my journey, that isn't how I wanted to parent Scarlett. So it was actually, how do I push myself to get out of my comfort zone, to go and do the next level that says, if all I can do is trade 90 hours of my life to be able to be really good at this technician, I'm going to sacrifice being a good mum. Whereas actually, if I push myself to the next level, then you can have both. You can juggle all of those elements. But you're right, you have to keep pushing yourself into that next level, isn't it? Into that, I always say it's learning to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, because that's where the magic happens. And if you can get comfortable there, the rest becomes quite easy, doesn't it?
Right. It's a muscle. You just have to do it. You have to keep doing it. You have to be comfortable failing. I mean, my team is probably so annoyed with me for how many ideas I bring to the table, and then we execute, and then we bail on them because like they're not working. And sometimes I get a lot of flack from them because it's like, why can't you just commit to something? And there's a time and a place to commit to something. But at the same time, I want to fail fast. I want to fail forward.
Yeah.
If we can just keep throwing a bunch of stuff out there, see what sticks, keep iterating, and not romanticize a certain way that things used to be done before, then that's how we know we can survive.
I love that. It is that constant iteration, isn't it? And looking at it and saying, okay, it's not always the idea that's wrong. It might just be the way we've executed it that needs a tweak, it needs an amend, it needs a look. But if we look at the success in as great a detail as we look at the failures, then actually we find the next success, we find the next opportunity. Mike, I could literally chat to you all day, but I'm very conscious that we're coming to an end. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, of course. The website is felixandfingers.com. You can find us on any of the social platforms at Felix and Fingers. So pretty easy to find that way. Otherwise, my direct email is just mike@felixandfingers.com. That is the best way to reach me. At this point, I don't take phone calls. My wife can't even call me. My parents can't call me. It's amazing. I have all of that turned off. So email is the best way.
Amazing. I love that. I'll have to give that one a try.
Oh,
we will make sure that all of those details are in the show notes below. And thank you again on behalf of everybody watching and listening, and me personally, for coming on and being such an amazing guest and sharing such insight with us. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure, Kim.
Until next time, take care.